I don't believe so.
I don't think so either.
Yeah.
Unless you haven't been on camera. I'm starting to recognize faces of people that have been here. So I'm really happy to have you. Thanks for coming today.
Thank you.
Do you know Leslie?
No, I don't.
Co-hosting today? Okay.
Oh, well, maybe.
She's been in classes, so she's going to co-host with me today.
Okay.
She's bringing some great ideas.
Okay.
We have a pretty nice sized class today. It's great. Hey, Alberta.
Morning, Deb.
Hi, Alice. Hi, Jessica.
Hello.
There's Betty and Laura. Welcome back, Laura. And Pam.
Thank you. Good to be back.
Nice.
Hi, Deb.
Hello. How are you?
I'm good.
There's Leslie.
Deb.
Hello, good morning. So excited for this class, and we had 35 people signed up for it. 36 maybe. We're really getting a lot coming in. Sandra, I wonder, Sandra Ramey, are you there? Sandra, am I saying your last name properly?
Yes, Ramey.
Okay. Would you have just a moment to talk to me after the class? Could you stay online?
Sure.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Morning, Deb.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing today?
Very well, thanks. It's a beautiful day in Pennsylvania.
Oh, it's beautiful in Calgary, Alberta, too.
This is one of those perfect spring days that we only get about 5 of.
Exactly.
Not for me in California, Deb. It's going to be 108.
Oh, that's too hot.
Yep, I'm right there with you, Carolyn, in New Mexico. It's over 100.
Yep. Hi, Leslie. Where are you?
I'm in New Mexico, and it'll be over 100 today.
Yes, it's going to be that for several days.
Yeah. So, yeah, we'll come and visit you guys in Alberta, Canada. Try to drag some of your cool air back.
Yeah. No kidding. Oh, that's beautiful. Look at the backdrop.
Yeah.
It is. Well, we've just got a few more people entering in here right now, so we'll just give it just a few more seconds. So good to see everyone.
Yes, I'm seeing a lot of familiar faces.
Yeah. And some new faces too.
Yes. Good morning, Laura.
Good morning. Who's talking?
This is Leslie.
There we are, Leslie. That little green, I get a green box when people talk, but I can't always see it because I'm too far away.
Oh, okay.
Okay. I think we can go ahead and get started. So I am going to share my screen and we'll get this show on the road.
Deb, I sent to Russ Ames my recipe for garlic cheese bread that's to die for. And he asked if I sent it to you, and I asked him if he could forward it to you. So I don't know if you got it or what.
I have not gotten it as of yet, but I'd love to have that, Carolyn. So
it is yummo.
Delicious. We'll put that in our file. They usually show up in a class, those recipes at some point or another. So thank you for sending that. I'll make sure I chat with Russ.
Well, I sent it to Russ, so check in with him and he should be able to forward it. And it's wonderful because you can prep most of it ahead of time, put it in the fridge, and then just remelt the butter and smear it on the top and bake it.
Nice. Well, that fits right into the theme of our conversation today, our topic today, which is make ahead meals or make ahead dishes, easy cooking for one or two. So for those of you who may be new, have not been in any of my classes, I want to welcome you. I recognize almost everybody here. There's a few one single names. I'm not exactly sure if I know you or not, but if you are new, my name is Deb Livingston and I'm your guide here from York, Pennsylvania, where it is a beautiful spring day and the sun's shining. I'm looking outside and it's just gorgeous. My background's in business, but I really enjoy on the side organic gardening and cooking healthy meals, but just food in general. I love food and love cooking and trying new things, even when they fail. Like my fudge was sort of a fail yesterday. It's okay because we try again and we understand based on our experience what we need to do differently next time. And Leslie and I've certainly had that conversation. So anyway, I think that we learn from our experiences and we learn from each other. And the best way that we can learn from each other in this format is for everybody to be on camera, if you can be part of the community, part of the conversation. I will just ask you to join by camera. I do understand that if you can't, that's fine. The other thing I would invite you to do is ask questions by unmuting yourself along the way and just asking a question. But do, especially in a class this size, keep yourself on mute until you're ready to say something, because you might have noticed there's a little bit of feedback going on when we're talking in a large group like this. You can request a recording of the class, of course, as usual, by emailing help@getsetup.io. And we are live streaming this class today. So I want to say hello to those of you who are joining by live stream. It's great to have you. I think we're going to have a very lively and enlightening conversation today. And we'll be doing this again sometime, I think, right, Leslie? So if you would like what you see on live stream today, you might come back and register and join us for the conversation at a later time, be part of the discussion. And we always are sharing with you ideas and websites and products and so on. And you should know that Get Set Up doesn't have any financial relationship with any of those companies and products and individuals. So I'm totally excited to have Leslie come back. She was here a few weeks ago and she talked about easy meals for 1 or 2. And gave us some recipes and some ideas. And there was so much to talk about that she agreed to come back and talk about make ahead mixes, which is a real important aspect of what she does in her meal prep. So we're going to meet Leslie, and then we're going to talk about her strategy. So we're going to look at how to cut down on meal prep with make ahead mixes. What in the heck are they anyway? And then how to make them and store them. She's got some really good tips and tricks for that. And then has some strategies for helping us to get started. Recipes that make use of make ahead mixes. How do we know what we can make ahead like that? How do we look at a recipe and determine whether it's appropriate as a make ahead recipe? And she's going to give us an example of that. And with whatever time we have left, if you have a recipe and would like to understand whether yours is convertible, I think that Leslie is welcoming questions on that. So I just would like to encourage you to also chat liberally in the chat room. So especially in a group this size, it might not be always easy to get a word in. So you can put your questions in the chat. Leslie and I are going to periodically stop and take a breath and check the chat and see what questions you have, and we will go from there. So with that in mind, I'm going to ask you this question. What are your biggest challenges in meal prep? Could you please put those answers in the chat right now?
I'm sorry, I'm new. Where is the chat room?
Oh, thank you for asking. So I'm glad you said that. So the chat, if you see your toolbar down at the bottom of your Zoom screen, do you see different icons on the bottom, like where your microphone is and your camera? Do you see all of that? You see a toolbar at the bottom of your screen?
If you're on an iPad, it's at the top.
Yes,
Yeah.
right. Yes, that's a good point. What device are you on?
I'm on my phone, but
You're
I
on-
see it.
Do you see it? Okay. So you could also, if you don't see chat, you can click on the extra little dots there until you see the chat button. And we also have our tech support in the room, Anthony. Anthony, you can check in and see whether we're doing okay with getting to that. Let us know. I wasn't quite sure who asked that question. Who asked about the phone? Are you doing okay with the chat?
Oh, my name is Alice.
Alice. Okay. So have you
Yeah,
found
I
it?
found it.
Okay. Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alice. So challenges here, lack of time. Yep. So we need to save some time. Having some variety is another one. Tend to use the same recipes that we remember over and over. Having something quick and easy to make. Yes, quick and easy. I have 30-minute meal classes, by the way, so you can always check those out. And sometimes people come to 30-minute classes and say, can you get that to 15? So I get it. So there will be some ways to do that, I think, that Leslie's going to talk about today. And incidentally, I'm doing a class at 3 o'clock, 2 o'clock on meal planning tips and ideas to cover some of the topics around variety. So you might want to stop in for that. Time, money, and space, the mess afterwards, Carolyn says. Okay. So yeah, cleaning up is no fun. Once I've prepped, it makes more than I expected. So what do I do with what's left? And planning and having meat portions actually thawed out. So planning ahead in time to have those ready. Yeah, there's nothing worse than saying, oh, I think I'd like chicken for dinner tonight. And you have this hard old piece of chicken in the freezer that won't be anywhere close to ready to be used. Planning and recipes. Mary, hope to see you at that class later this afternoon. If not, we're running it again next week. I never eat until I'm hungry, so I want it fast. Yeah. Picking a recipe that can be made for 1 or 2 people. So this is a really important class. Leslie's very skilled on that. She's been doing that for a while. She's cooked for groups as well as for her and her husband. Okay, thinking I have what I need, then not having what I need, then having to substitute. Yeah, that's a problem. Okay, so it sounds like today we're covering a lot of that, and both in this class and in the class that I'm going to be having at 2 o'clock. So thanks for participating in that. And let me just stop sharing my screen now, and I'm going to begin to introduce you now to Leslie.
Deb, is that 2 o'clock your time or?
Thank you. It is. It's 2
Okay.
o'clock Eastern time. Thank you
Okay.
for saying that, clarifying. Yep, 2 o'clock Eastern time. So everybody should be able to see Leslie. If you can't see her on the large screen, you can go up to her photograph and click on the 3 dots that are on the right-hand corner of her picture. And when you see that, you can say pin to first screen, and that will make sure that she comes up in large living color. Is everybody able to see Leslie okay?
No, I can't. I mean, you were still the primary presenter, and when I go to the boxes with people's pictures, I tried to click on Leslie's box, and I'm on an iPad, so I don't see where to make her or pin her.
Okay.
But I
Hang
think
on for a minute.
I think she's going to end up, when she starts talking, she'll take the big
Take
part
the
of the
lead.
screen. Yes, that's fine.
Okay, so let's see. Jeannie, let us know then. We'll get
Okay, I will.
started here with Leslie. So meet Leslie Lamb. Leslie, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Tell us where you live. And I've already said it's you and your husband, how many
Yep.
you're cooking for, but where do
Yep.
you live? And how
Okay.
long have you been a member of Get Set Up?
Okay, we live in New Mexico. Can you see me now? The person that wasn't able to see me when I'm
Yes,
talking?
yeah,
Okay,
you're taking her
All right.
screen.
Thank you so much. So we live in New Mexico. We live in a very small apartment. My husband's job has transferred us around. We moved twice in 1 year, which I recommend you do. So during that, we downsized considerably for the last 5 years, maybe, because of those recent moves. So I live in a tiny apartment with a tiny kitchen. I have a total of 18 inches of counter space. I wish I was kidding about that, but I'm not. And we have an apartment size fridge and freezer. So I had to completely change the way I make meals to not only cut down on the amount of food I was cooking, but I have little storage space for leftovers, and I don't like them anyways. So
if you can do it, we can do it, is
Yep.
what I'm hearing.
Yep.
And so how long have you been coming to get set up?
I think it's been about 6 or 8 weeks.
Okay.
I've been kind of a binge watcher at Get Set Up, so it seemed shorter and longer at the same time. But I believe it's only been about 6 to 8 weeks.
And I just want to say as an aside, Leslie has come in as a learner, and then she's come on board here as a co-host, and she's also leading an interest group, and that interest group is in what?
Travel.
Travel right now, and you're getting into something, we'll possibly do something more with cooking with me as we go on here.
Yeah.
So how did you find your way to meal prepping this style? And
Okay.
well, what challenges? I think you mentioned
Yeah.
some of the challenges you were trying.
Yeah. So I actually started meal prepping, so to speak, way back in 1988. I was a single mom and I was working full-time and going to school full-time. So I needed to make meals that I thought were healthy, that were also on budget for my son and I. And I did invest in a small chest freezer, and I started doing once a month cooking, which is also known as conveyor belt cooking, in that you just prepare a bunch of things in advance and stick them in the freezer. I also started doing the mixes on a very limited basis because I had room for the frozen food, and that worked out best for me at the time. As we've moved into these new living conditions, that didn't work for me. So I was trying to figure out how can I do conveyor belt cooking on a shelf stable basis. And that's where the Make a Mix really kicked in. So, but yeah, it was way, way, way back in the day that I started doing this.
Okay. So can you give us an overview of that strategy?
Sure. So I know during the class we're going to have some handouts, and the handouts are going to include some of the cookbooks that I've used specifically for the Make a Mix meals. Also some recipe links to great sites to get recipes. But what I initially did was just convert the recipes I already had. So, and if we have time, we can go into that. And it is really kind of a trial and error process because I was not only cutting down the recipe size, but I was cutting down the size of the container I cooked it in. So, you know, if it was a baked good, maybe instead of making an 8x8, I was making muffins. And you do kind of have to fiddle around with your cooking times. And I also live in a high desert altitude. So I was also doing altitude adjustments. So it got to be kind of messy there. And I think one of the handouts we have is actually a measurement conversion table or handout, because once you know how to convert from cups to tablespoons, from tablespoons to teaspoons, you can convert any recipe. So then I just started looking for what recipes was I currently making that I thought could convert well into shelf stable. So basically anything on my grocery store shelves.
So let's go back. Let's just take a quick step back and say, what exactly is a make ahead meal mix? What defines it?
Well, in my terms, it's something that I can make ahead in quantities, but I do them small. So I will put them in individual baggies, and it's the recipe size. And I know I sent Deb a picture late in the game. I'm not sure if she got that on exactly what one of my recipes looks like, but it's literally a Ziploc bag with those ingredients in it. So the conveyor belt cooking part comes into, I hate to clean up. Someone mentioned the cleaning up thing. So I do everything I can to reduce the amount of time spent cleaning up. I don't have a dishwasher. So I want to get those measuring cups and spoons out one time, and I just want to make up as much as I'm able to store.
And you
So
can-
there it is. So it's, I'm obviously not good at taking pictures yet, but I just literally will line up those bags on my 18-inch counter space, have all my ingredients out, my measuring cups out, my recipe out, and I put it in just a plastic page protector, and I just start measuring out. So this is one of our favorite corn muffin mixes. We don't do it in an 8x8. And I will change this tag because I found out this is like a work in progress. I found out I need my cooking time and temp, and I need the date that I made the mix. I need to add that. But my husband can pull this out of the cabinet, and I'm like, honey, can you start the corn muffins? And he's all I got to do is make sure he knows, where to get the stuff. He's not good about measuring, so I got to put the measurements on there. But just get a bowl out. Here's the mix that up while I'm doing this. And I realize not everyone has that, but he's welcome or willing to do that. It's also great for the grandkids. We do some mug mixes, and so the grandkids can pull them out and they're like, Grandma, how do I make this in the microwave? Well, I'm trying to teach them cooking skills too, is another thing that's like a big why behind it. So I want them to feel empowered in cooking, and I want them to just read the recipe and ask a question and learn to measure and, all that stuff. So that's how my mix is.
How often do you do this meal prepping? What's your schedule for that?
I don't have a schedule per se because I personally just make up the mixes when I need it for that day. But I'm already measuring it out. So it's kind of hard to do like show and tell, and I can't really see myself on the screen because of the way I have it. But I just have a little, can you guys see this? I just have a little container. And this is like just a leftover thing from Costco that had meat in it.
Mm-hmm.
So I have little mixes in there. So those little corn muffin mixes, I make up however many will fit in this container, which I think is about 5.
So are you saying that when you have a need for that mix and you don't have any of it, you just, at that time, you make a lot of it?
I do.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Gotcha.
So your seasoning class, I have a sheet pan supper, and this one is like empty. There's only one left in here. And I just made it up in a little container, which I learned from your class. I'll change my little container. It's in a little plastic container. I only have one of them. So once I use this up, I'm going to need to make more and fill this little container up. And then I'm good to go. So it only takes a few extra minutes to do more than one because you're just remeasuring everything. Does that make sense? So as far as actually scheduling time to make mixes, it's not like when I did once a month cooking. Once a month cooking was like a military precision drill. Mm-hmm. It's not that. It's just, now it could be if that's what I wanted it to be, but it's not. It's just,
so you're not having to make a special time of the week or chunk out several hours to do anything. You're just doing it as it comes up, and that's just saving you time later. That makes so much sense. And Laura has a question. She has her hand raised.
Okay.
Go ahead, Laura. You have to unmute yourself.
There we go. I just noticed that you used a half an egg.
Yes.
Are you using dried eggs or?
No, I'm not.
And I think Leslie's actually going to get into that as we get into a specific recipe. Thanks for asking. That's a good.
Yeah, I don't.
Up there. Okay. So Leslie, before we get into how to make these mixes, I just wanted to ask you how does this who does this strategy really work the best for, you think?
Well, I think it works the best for people that, number one, are willing to try, experiment, and fail. Like you said, especially if you're talking about the baking part of the mixes, if you're doing baking mixes, because you may not have the right cooking time at first. I mean, I judge and try to figure out, and I have had some epic fails. And usually it takes me about 3 times to get to where it really works. So for instance, I make a vegan oatmeal, baked oatmeal. The first time I did that, I put that into muffin tins with liners. It's too moist. It doesn't work that way. The next time I put it in the muffin tin with no liners, it's still too moist. It doesn't work that way. The third time I put it in silicone bake pans, that worked. So that's the way I make it from now on. So even if you're making up mixes, if you're not following a recipe that's specifically designed for a mix, if you're converting your own recipes for mixes, you're gonna have a little trial and error.
Good answer. And that flows right into another question that Melinda actually asked. She said, are you going to share what is in the mixes? And I think you just answered that with, well, some of that depends upon what your recipe is, but you also have resources that you're going to share with us
Yes.
that will show mixes that are specific for this.
Yes. Yes, recipes that are specific for the purpose. But I also want to make sure people understand it is very easy to convert a family favorite as long as it meets certain qualifications.
Okay, great. Thanks for that question, Melinda.
Yes,
So,
thank you.
so now how do you make these mixes? Let's get right into the process now. Go ahead.
Okay, so like I mentioned, if I'm gonna make cornbread for dinner tonight, corn muffins. I don't have any of my mixes already made. When I get out all the ingredients for my corn muffins, I'm going to also get out my baggies, and I'm just going to measure out all the dry ingredients for that recipe into those baggies. Plus, I'm going to have a bowl that I'm measuring out all the dry ingredients into the bowl. Yeah, and I think Deb's going to bring up a recipe. We can kind of go through that too. So I'm sure everyone has probably like doubled or tripled a recipe in the past. So we're just doing that in reverse. Now we're maybe just, instead of doubling and tripling, we're cutting in half or thirds or whatever. So this is my actual corn muffin recipe. And so this particular one, you can see it takes 1 1/4 cups of cornmeal, and it makes 12 servings. I don't want to make 12 servings at one time because I don't have the freezer space and that type of thing. We're not going to eat them that fast. So I'm going to first cut the recipe down, and I'm going to determine, will it make a good mix? So you can see by looking at this, there are a lot of dry ingredients. So the cornmeal, the flour, sugar, baking powder, baking soda, salt, those are all dry. I can put all of those into a single baggie. Then when I get ready to make the recipe, I'm going to need to add the buttermilk and the egg. And so I first will cut the recipe down. This particular recipe, I found out I liked better if I added applesauce. And as you go down, you'll see in the recipe, there's some variations where if you want it moister, add some applesauce or something else. So there's a lot of variations here that I can do with this recipe. But that's basically how I determine, am I going to be able to take a family favorite recipe and make a mix? If I've got a lot of dry ingredients that are shelf stable, I'm good to go. Does that make sense? Okay.
I think so. I'm looking in the chat to see if anybody's got any. I don't see any new questions at this point, so I think we're good to go.
So what that brings us into with this is 2 things. Number one, cutting a recipe down. To be honest with you, cutting things down is kind of a pain. So we've got a resource for you that, like I said, you're just going to look and say, okay, if you're cutting it in a half, a third, a fourth, or whatever for that recipe, and you're using a cup. I mean, a cup is pretty easy to cut. You're going to cut a cup. You're going to have, if you cut it in half, you're going to have this much. And I'll go through this real quick here. So the really hard part about cutting a recipe, if anybody's tried to do this, is it gets really math messy. So that's why I made this little cheat sheet. So Deb, if you want,
let me interrupt you just 1 second, because I think I failed to tell you, and most of you already know this, you'll get an email after class with all of this information. So don't worry about taking a picture of your screen to get these conversions or anything else. She's got beautiful handouts here, and we're going to attach them, and you're going to have them to print out and use on your own then. Thanks, Leslie. Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. So like I said, I mean, it explains how to do the math, because again, I'm teaching little ones how to do math with little grandkids. So we need to do math, but I don't like to do math. So then it just goes into, like, as long as you know how many tablespoons are in a cup, and then as many teaspoons are in a tablespoon. If you go down a little bit further, Deb, it'll show Okay, one more. Yeah, okay. So you'll get one that if you cut it in half or you cut it in a third or a fourth or whatever, it tells you, because obviously, and I'm pointing at my own screen because I'm not used to doing this sharing thing, but if you're going to do a cup and cut that in a third, that's pretty easy. It's a third of a cup. But if you're going to do a tablespoon or like a teaspoon and cut it in a third, what are you going to do? Right? You're going to have to figure that out. And if you're doing like a recipe that's like really, really precise, these measurements may not work for you, but they've always worked for me. I don't do real precise measurements. Like I know people talk about when you're baking bread, you need a kitchen scale. I don't do that. I just use my measuring cups and it comes out fine. So that's one of the big things, is being able to cut the recipe down. So number one, knowing, is it a recipe that will convert into a mix, or has it already been done for me through one of those resources? Or is it something I'm going to have to cut down myself? And if so, how do I determine if it's a good candidate to cut down? And number three, how do I actually do the math to cut it down? Does that help?
Definitely. So
Definitely.
what questions do we have right now about how she goes about making those mixes? Before we move on, the next thing we'll talk about is,
So basically, you're just simply saying, try to package the dry ingredients.
Yes.
And then you've got the dry ingredients already. Now, I'm assuming there's a lot of recipes where you have the flour and this and one dry mix.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So you actually maybe have two little dry mixes.
I might have
Maybe.
more than one.
Yeah.
Yes, I might.
but you
Yes, I
have-
might. Mm-hmm. That is
add
exactly
the
right.
butter and eggs to the sugar and then add the flour to that. So
Yes,
as
that
opposed
is.
to having
that's-
the flour and sugar all mixed together.
Yep. That's
So-
totally. Now, I actually just dump everything together and see if it works. And if it doesn't work, then I go back to the other one. But Melinda, that is a great point, because I actually, myself personally, I use freeze-dried food. So some of this came out of me making meals in a jar, which are great sites to search for if you're trying to find sites to make, just a general search for meals in a jar. But when I make meals in a jar using freeze-dried food, I will often layer things in the jar. Number one, it makes it pretty to look at if I want to give it as a gift. But number two, it makes it easy for me to tuck that little baggie of stuff in the top if I want to have a baggie tucked in there with something. I don't put my meat in my make a mix meal jars because I prefer to store my freeze-dried meat in the fridge. But that's just a personal thing for me. So yes, and I do that often if I'm making gifts for people and I've got a little tag attached. It will tell them, pull out the first bag and do this, or pull the baggie off the top of the jar and set it aside and do this, and then add that in. So yes, it doesn't always work, but I know Deb and I, when we first talked, I was like, I'm kind of a lazy cook, right? I'm not one of those people who loves to cook. I'm like, I would really love it if my family only liked to eat like 3 times a week. That would be ideal. But they're really annoying because they actually want to eat 3 times a day, So I'm like, I got to figure out how to make this work for me. So I'm not spending all my time in the kitchen, and I'm not spending all my time cleaning up. And just someone who talked about that, I do everything I can. I do silicone pans. I line my pans. I cook my fish in foil. I do everything I can to reduce that cleanup because I don't care to do that. And if I'm going to be doing that, there's usually something else going on too. Like I might incentivize myself.
Parchment paper on cookie sheets.
Parchment paper is good too.
Really
Yes. Yes.
saves the cleanup on the cookie
It
sheet.
sure
or
It does.
faster.
So
It does.
Leslie, you also referred to storing some of the things like your dehydrated meat or your
Right.
freeze-dried meat. So let's talk about storing and labeling, and how do you keep track of all of your mixes? What do you do with them once you've made them?
Okay, as far as storing and labeling, I personally print out little tags right now. And I use Canva actually to make these little tags. And so I just will put in there the ingredients, but like I said, what I need to add when I'm cooking it. But I need to also add to that the date that I made the mix and the cooking time and temp, because it's not on my current little tag. So as you're going along and you've made these mixes up, you're going to realize that you need to maybe change some things. When I was doing the cooking for the freezer, I was using freezer Ziploc bags, and I would just stick one freezer Ziploc bag down inside of another one, and I would handwrite on a recipe card that information and just stick it in between the bags. So as far as storing them, then because I'm using plastic bags and those tend to fall over in the cabinets, I'm going to find something to stick them in, like that meat container, that came from the turkey at Costco or something like that, just to containerize all of them. And then as far as also keeping things easy, I do a lot of baskets, a lot of pull-out bins that I get from Walmart. So I might stick everything in there. I do stackable shoe boxes, Sterilite shoe boxes. I even use those in my fridge and my freezer, but I also use them in my pantry, so they stack.
Leslie, do you organize by meal? Like, these are all my breakfast mixes, my lunch mixes, my dinner mixes, or how do you know where you just label the bin and you know what's in the bin? Okay.
Yes, because I tend to have the same mixes. I probably don't have as much variety as some people may like, but that's okay for me, because one of the really big problems that I have, and Deb, I'm going to your class today, is meal planning fatigue, right? So, and I know this is really silly, but I just made up my own little recipe binder. It's literally just a binder from Walmart with little page protectors inside of it. And then you guys will get a handout, but I just had a little handout I made up, and I went through my cookbooks and I was like, okay, I'm trying to digitize all my recipes. So I just put down the recipe and the cookbook title and like what page did I find it on. And then I'm going to try to work that into my meals. I also have a little recipe card. And again, but you'll get a handout on that, because I'm one of those kind of people. When my mom was a cookbook collector. She loved to collect cookbooks. I wish I still had her cookbooks. I don't. But she would put on there, this is a keeper. I'm sure we all do this. We've all had family members that do this. This is a keeper. Dad didn't like this one. Need to do this, right? So the little recipe card has like for you to put ratings. Is it a 1 to 10? Would you make it again? So when I'm cooking, they first go into this little binder to see is it something I'm going to want to take the time to digitize. And if I'm not going to want to take the time to digitize, it's hard to see, but you'll probably see, can you see all that messy handwriting on there?
Leslie, I have your form up on the screen.
Oh, good. Okay. So I'm like,
You see it?
It gets messy. It gets messy when it's in that binder and I'm working through things to see how am I going to make this work better.
I love that you have this scale down here that you can rate your recipe.
Deb, we've got the whole class on screen, not.
You don't see you don't see my share? Okay, let me try that again. Now
There.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Sure thing. So here's her table of contents, and then the individual recipe cards, which she is so clever because you've also made this so that you can share it with others. Put your own name in there or others' names with the scale at the bottom. So a great tool. So this is another handout that you're going to get in your email.
Yeah. So one of my other hobbies is just doing little pretty printables. So,
And Leslie, you mentioned, just for learners who might not have heard of Canva before, what is Canva and how did you learn to use Canva for this purpose?
Okay. Canva is an online design tool that is made for non-designers. I am a non-designer, but I'm also a scrapbooker. So the way I made that is I went into Canva. I used a template, which you can get Canva templates, and you can get them directly in Canva. Just search for recipe. So it's just Canva, canva.com. Get Set Up does have classes on them. Scott actually teaches a class on Canva recipe cards. I have not taken his class yet, but that would be somewhere to go. But I personally just use the template, and then I put my little scrapbooking supplies on there, my little digital scrapbooking supplies. So when you see from the kitchen of, and when you see that rating scale at the bottom, I didn't make that. That's a little embellishment, they call it, in digital scrapbooking terms. And I just popped it on there.
Do you fill out, instead of handwriting on the cards, you just upload that and then just type it in on the computer so that you have it all digitized, all those recipes digitally?
You can, if the form is PDF fillable. This particular one is not yet PDF fillable, but it will be, because my handwriting is atrocious.
Great.
So it will
Great
be.
information. And I wanted to say to you that we are starting to build these kinds of classes just for you so you can do better planning and organization. So Scott's class on recipe cards is one that we saw a need for. And so if you get a chance to get into that class, that's great. Because another thing that you can think about, and Leslie and Scott and several of us at Get Set Up are talking about this, is how you can take your kitchen information, your recipes, your beloved recipes, your family stories around food, and create gifts and keepsakes out of those, whether it be a cookbook or a plate or a towel or any number of things that you might be able to do with that. And we want to be able to give you the tools to be able to do that. So I'm planting the seed right now that if you thought about how you might hand down some of your family recipes in a variety of ways, start, kind of keeping your eyes open for these classes to pop up. And we're going to be doing an overview session of that in the upcoming week or two. Well, probably in about 2 weeks or so, with Leslie, with Scott, with Russ, who talks about how to write memoir. So how to write little stories around your family history with food and so on. So if that sparks a note of interest with you, stay tuned.
Yes, and yeah, please put something either in the chat or in a feedback form to let us know that's something you are interested in.
That's handy for the younger generation, because I know my daughter, when it comes to recipes, she either has recipe sites or she always just pulls it up online. So if, like I said, if digitally you can convert this stuff,
Yep.
They're, like I said, they're in a digital world on their phone, not in cookbooks, in scrapbooks like we are.
No, they are not. But that does bring up a really interesting point, Melinda, is I actually am, as part of this project we're talking about, I am doing a family keepsake cookbook. So it's kind of a big expansive project, which starts with just one little recipe and then another little recipe. And the reason I'm doing it the way I'm doing it, which is using Canva, is so that I can both get it printed out for my relatives that are older that want these family stories. They want these recipes, but they do not want them digitally. And my grandchildren and my daughters who don't want anything printed, they want it 100% digital. So by doing it the way I'm doing it, I have both options.
Which is a very cool idea. I can't wait to talk more about that. So with the time we have left, though, I want to make sure that we're also getting to some of the important favorite resources that you use for these mixes. So anybody who wants to do that can do that on their own. So how about if I share that?
Yep, that would be great.
Picture, and you can talk about those sources.
Okay. So you will have, Deb's going to bring up a handout, and I will tell you what my favorite place is to go and how to navigate in another handout.
Okay, so what I have here, Leslie, I have your books and your budget 101. Do you want to start there and then look at your handout? Okay.
Yep, that's good.
So can you see the two cookbook covers here, just to give you see that?
So if you are a cookbook person, or even if you're a Kindle person, these both are available either as a Kindle version or as a actual physical printed version. The Make a Mix cookbook was what I actually started with way back in the 80s or 90s. It was two cookbooks, which are not currently available, but they did consolidate it into this. So that's where I started with it. My recommendation to everyone, and I'm sure you already know this, but if you go on Amazon and you like search for these, do the look inside feature. Look at some of the contents, look at the table of contents, look at the recipes, see if that's something you're interested in doing. And if not, the cookbook I use now is the Quick Fix Healthy Mix, which I highly, highly recommend. Just because it's more like our eating style now than the Make a Mix cookbook. Is not quite us so much, and it's more for larger families. So those are 2 cookbooks.
And then you have a website here that you
Mhm.
really like.
Yep. So budget101.com is a lot of things, but this is their complete mix recipe index. And again, you'll get the link to this in the handout. And I think what I tell you in there is if you don't do anything after this class to find any recipes, just go here because you'll find everything you could ever think of. So you'll see there's beverage, breakfast, mug meals, muffin mixes, everything. There is literally, if you can't find it here, it probably doesn't exist. This is my #1 place to go find recipes for mixes. Deb, if you want to click on just one of them, then I can kind of show people what I do to.
My goodness, I'm having a hard time picking one. I'm going to pick.
Leslie, you go to budget 101 and then under that, where do you go to find the?
When Deb was on budget 101, you're on an index page. So just click on any of the links on the index page. So let's go back real quick and we'll see. I appreciate Deb sharing her screen because just so all of you know, I'm a little bit nervous about presenting this class, and adding on screen sharing was just not something I felt I could do today.
So I'm on the home page right now. And if you happen to land on the home page at budget 101, just make sure that you're navigating across the top here and you're clicking on recipes, I believe. And so, well, that's not exactly it. Where is the index from here?
I was going to say, I just always have the link. I saved the link.
Yeah, let me just see if
I think once you're on that page, keep scrolling down. And I think that's where I saw, well.
Yeah,
These
I
are
think
all
it was
individual recipes.
Yeah, it was.
Let me just go back and check something out here. I think I can get to that. Let's try that again.
There we go. Okay.
So it is the recipes /516 complete mix recipe index, but it's a
Right.
little harder to.
I was going to say that's why I would never find it unless I bookmarked it.
Yeah.
But if you scroll down a little bit, Deb, it shows mixed recipes by category. So each one of those that's underlined is a category. It is a link. When you click on it, it should automatically open another page.
And Leslie, with the upcoming announcement about a Make Ahead Mix challenge, is there a particular category we should be looking at, or is that open to any mix?
Well, it's open to any mix, but I myself am going to focus on the mug mixes because they make great gifts. And my reason for doing the challenge is mostly to test drive some recipes that I plan to make in mugs and give as gifts. So when you are on this page, if you see where it says see also mug and cup mixes index, I click on that because if I don't, I have to scroll through all the pretty pictures. And it's faster for me to click there and say, oh, wow, that brownie mix in a mug, that looks good. I'll check that one out. Does that make sense?
Looks great. And I see that there's sweet and savory in here.
Mm-hmm.
There's
Yep.
a chicken and rice casserole in a mug.
Mm-hmm.
What a great, I was just thinking about how that would apply not only as gifts, but even for things if you're cooking for or preparing things for someone else and they need a quick and easy meal.
Yes. And that is really, really a good point, Deb. Our church has a meal ministry. And I've thought about volunteering with it. And this would be a great way for me to cut that down if I focus my meal delivery for that ministry to seniors or people that didn't need the large family quantities.
Ladies,
And so do we, where do we find the cheap mugs?
I get them at Dollar Tree is where I get them, but
Okay.
or thrift stores. I used to get them at when we went to thrift
Okay.
stores.
so do you bake in them?
I do turn them over to make sure that they are microwave safe. I don't bake in the oven with them. If I was going to bake in the oven, I would need to probably invest in something a little higher quality.
So just be
And-
aware of that. Just be
Yeah.
aware of that. If you're going to cook in those mugs, you'll have to find
Right.
something that's
Are
going-
all these recipes microwavable?
On the mug ones, I'm not positive. So when you go to this site, that was one thing I was going to let you know. If you make a mix, even though these are mixed recipes, not all of these work for me because they're not all shelf stable. So you'll need to look and see, is this going to work for you? Is this a microwavable mix? Now, any of the ones I've looked at have been microwavable, but I have not looked at everything on this site because it's just so comprehensive. I told Deb, I was laughing when I was sharing this with her. I could stay on here for days, right? Not even come up for air because there's just so much here, which is why I like to just look at the list and say, oh, what do I want to try to cook today? And then for me, a big thing is, do I already have the stuff in the house or do I need to add it to the grocery list?
I know
Or
I've
can I
tried a
substitute?
couple of those mug mixes. They're starting to sell them in the grocery store now.
Yes, yes.
This is obviously a lot cheaper, but they are
Yes.
handy for one person when you feel like, I feel
They
like,
are.
a hot brownie with some ice cream on it tonight.
Right,
So
right.
I put myself in a mug, you've got it done in 2 minutes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and another good thing about it, my husband and I are both trying to lose weight. And so if, we've got pre-portioned and it's like, well, yes, you could go in there and grab all 10 of things out of there and cook them and eat them. But, it's kind of a break in, oh, do I really want to do that? No, it's just easier to have the mugs because you've got one serving of a delectable brownie and it didn't kill your diet.
Plus, that sounds like a fun thing for grandchildren to be able
It's
to
so fun with the grandkids. Oh my gosh. They have that huge sense of empowerment because they've made their own mix. And they go and share it like at school. And it's like, no, I don't buy Betty Crocker mixes, Grandma, and I make them in the kitchen, So yeah, I love seeing my grandkids get excited about cooking. So.
What a great local movement you could start with making
Yeah.
mug mixes for community groups and
Right.
people who
And
need.
this would be great for anybody that's in a community, and once it's also a long, long time ago, I did we used to cook with my friends, right? We'd get together and we'd cook, we'd make meals. Like I bring all the ingredients for these meals. They bring all the ingredients for these meals. I think we called it a cooking club. And then we'd share and it'd be like, well, you're over there making that. And it was all freezer stuff, and we'd all leave with a variety of meals, but I'd only made the chicken broccoli casserole.
So I want to just kind of stop us at this point because I know we've got a few minutes left to wrap up, but do some other things. I want Leslie to just, can you go over your little handout just very quickly?
Mhm.
This is a
Yep.
handout that Leslie will provide, and I want to leave time for the meal challenge and our closing. So.
Yep.
kind of a
So
quick-
this is a pretty simple handout. It's just a recipe and resource list. So those 2 cookbooks that you saw the pictures of, there's the links to Amazon for those cookbooks. And then I just put a little note about, how I came across those cookbooks. Then the online site that we just were at. And like I said, this is my favorite place. I could stay there for days. And then it does say not all of the recipes are shelf stable. So you do need to adjust ingredients accordingly or store them as suggested. Like for instance, if you're going to make a baking mix and it has butter in it, you're going to need to store that in the fridge. Unless you're using freeze-dried butter, which is an option, but you're going to want to save that in the fridge. And then the additional links are some other places I found for gifts in a jar, which is just a great Google search gifts in a jar or meals in a jar. So those are just places I also like to go to. And the breads in a jar are ones that I'm trying out now. We love Irish soda bread, no knead bread, and beer bread. So I'm like, I think that those would make great gifts. So I personally have not tried those yet, but they look good to me. Soups, the same thing with the soup. Obviously in New Mexico, I'm going to make a painted desert chili mix. because that would be a great neighbor gift for people. And then just one example, and there's a lot on this site for the main dish meals in a jar. And these do use freeze-dried food. So you can adapt those. Like if you wanted to make this taco rice meal in a jar, you could go ahead and put all of the other ingredients, but just don't do the freeze-dried meat and just get a canned meat at Costco, you know, the roast beef from Costco or whatever you want to do. So it is really all about being adaptable and just kind of being fearless in the kitchen. And I speak from experience because I am a person that measures. I'm not like my mother, who you ask her for a recipe and it's a pinch of this and a pinch of that, and she could never replicate anything. I can replicate everything because I measure and I make notes. But I was also one of those people who was like, well, I have to follow the directions exactly. I have to use exactly what they called for. No, I can just see what happens if I don't follow the directions. And honestly, some of my fails have led to, we like it better that way. Like for instance, I was making a pumpkin muffin and I forgot to put the egg in, and we like it better without the egg. So back to Laura's question about how do you cut an egg in half? I do want to make sure, Deb, that I have, and I don't know if I shared it with you this time, but there is a great site that teaches you how to cut an egg in half. So there will be a link for that, hopefully in the handouts. And I can also try to pop it in the chat. But you basically, I just mix my egg up. It just, you know, like you were going to scramble it. I just mix it up and I measure out 2 tablespoons, and that's half an egg. It's good enough for me. Is it precise? No, but it's good enough for me.
Okay,
It's worked with everything.
Leslie, with a minute remaining here before we wrap up, talk about your Make Ahead Mix Challenge. We're putting a challenge out to all of you too, if you want. I believe Leslie has her personal challenge, but we wanted to invite you to join her.
Yeah, and so, yeah, I'm just inviting everyone, if you're at all interested in the Make a Mix concept, to make a mix each week. Just, you know, challenge yourself to make a mix each week. And I'm not good at hashtags, so I'm actually going to have to work with Get Set Up to do the hashtag part. But I'm going to use the hashtag of Make Ahead Meals or GSU Deb Cooking, so that we can all share our recipes and what we made and what worked, what didn't work, whether that's a conversion of a family recipe or one from that site. And I'm personally just making it easy. I'm picking it from the site. I'm sticking to one category because I have one goal, which is to give gifts. So
if you're not familiar with using hashtags, you can use them on your Facebook page or on your Instagram account, taking a picture of what you make and just putting both of those hashtags there for right now. We're evolving with the whole hashtag thing, but that's a great way to get things showcased and to interact and just have fun on another level with your social media accounts. So that's something to do. And also we're going to, at some point here, be connecting with a meal planning app that you will be able to join, and you can actually store your recipes in there and share them with one another. So this is a really great tool that you'll be learning more about, especially if you come to that class at 2 o'clock. And
yay.
It should be a lot of fun.
It should be, and I'll see everybody there because I'm going to be there.
Thank you so much, Leslie, for coming.
Thanks, Leslie. This was terrific.
Thank you. I appreciate everyone. I thank you so much. And I really appreciate Deb because I'm learning so much. I was one of those people who was never on screen and Get Set Up at first. So I just encourage everyone to just take those little steps on Get Set Up. It's a great platform. It's a great community. And I think Get Set Up. And Deb.
Can we also do more about freeze-dried foods?
Interesting.
I was going to say, and I'm not sure how that works. Of course, I have a lot of information and expertise. I've done that for years. I've been cooking with freeze-dried foods, I want to say, for probably 6 years now.
Are you specifically talking about cooking with freeze-dried foods or also making freeze-dried foods, Laura? Or just generally?
Just general, yes.
Just understanding what it is.
Using it. Yeah, using it.
Okay. All right.
Deb, what is the name of that class that's on it too?
Meal planning tips and ideas.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So
And if we can't make that one, you said it's coming back.
I'll be doing it several times in the upcoming weeks because we are
Okay.
going to be making more on meal planning. So
Okay, thank you.
Mhm, sure. Okay.
Just really quickly, I did drop the link for how to have an egg in the class. That.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Leslie, and I'll send that email out to you all. And yeah, meal planning tips, ideas, we'll do. Let's see. I'm going to just mute. If you don't mind just popping in there, muting yourself, that would be feedback.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay, no worries. I think it might happen.
No worries. I think.
There we go. So next classes, let's talk cooking and food right after the meal planning class. Tomorrow, Pam Penny's coming back from the community to talk about making bagels. And Monday, I'll be back in my kitchen teaching how to make chicken curry for beginners. So that's a lot of fun. I love that curry dish. And you'll be receiving that email. Don't forget to give us some feedback. We need to hear what you thought about today's classes. I'll send you some ideas for other classes, and you can always view your schedule right from that email and set up your next class. We always ask you to invite a friend. We think that's a fun way to do it and spend time together when you can't be physically together. And if you have community organizations, government organizations in your local community that we should be connecting with, just give us a name. We'll do that. Suggest a new class for us, host an interest group. That is all great. If you are interested in any of those, just go ahead and write to help@getsetup.io. And of course, you can request a recording there too. And I'm always interested in your input from my standpoint, Deb the Guide at getsetup.io. You can send me any recipes, ideas that you have, pictures. It's a good way to keep things really focused on what you're interested in. So I want to thank you all for coming. Thank Leslie again for your time and for all the work you put into this session. I know that it has really gotten a lot of questions, and I can see from smiling faces you really enjoyed
Yes.
it.
Excellent.
Thank you.
I
so
wish
much.
I was one of her grandkids.
Oh, that's so sweet. Thank you, Pat. I appreciate that. And I appreciate
Thanks for
everyone's
coming,
comment.
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Great show, ladies. Thank you. Have a
Thank
great week.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. And Sandra, are you still here? There you are. Yes, Sandra.
Yes, I'm still here.
So Sandra, I made a faux pas, I think. I was trying to get in touch with you about the strawberry dessert class. I thought I had sent you an email. Your name's on the email, but your email address was not there. I guess because I didn't have it and then I didn't get it and I thought I had it. So anyway, we've already had that class. I made your lovely dessert yesterday, but
Oh, you did?
I did. And it's in my freezer. And I wanted to ask you if you would like to come back because I think we've had people ask if we would do that again. I might shape it into an overall favorite berry dessert class, but I wondered if you might like to come on and talk about it like Kathy Hilton came and talked about hers. What do you think?
Or just talk about it, not make it?
You don't have to make it.
Yeah, sure. I mean, when I sent you that recipe, I had, I had some recipes I was trying to sort through and I had never made it. I had saved it. So finally I made it a couple weeks ago and I took it to a little gathering and the people seemed impressed with it.
Okay, good.
The recipe never said if you're supposed to serve it frozen or at, I sort of let mine melt a little bit and served it that way. And people seem to be impressed with it. Someone said you should take a picture of it. So, I mean, it's a recipe I'm definitely going to keep.
Good, good. Did you have any others that you wanted to include or add or send my way?
Not strawberry. I guess I don't for strawberry. Of course, everyone likes that strawberry pie is always good. I think I've only made it once, but yeah, I guess I don't. But yeah, that I definitely would keep that recipe because people were impressed with it.
Okay.
And I drizzled a little bit of chocolate syrup on top too, just so that you know.
That's a great idea. See, those are the tips that we need to talk about in these classes. And you're sitting, I think, right next to Linda, if your screen is the same as mine. And Linda was asking about blueberry dessert recipes. So I think I'm going to open the next one up to all berries because we had a berry clafouti recipe. Berry, so we need some blueberry recipes. I think we'll just do blueberry or berries and
Berries.
So if you have anything, or if anybody else has any that they want to send in, that'd be great.
Okay.
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 Well,
Okay.
thanks. I'll be in touch, Sandra, about that.
Okay.
to let
Okay.
know.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. See you, ladies.